newborn in her arms, gently rocking back and forth, humming some lullaby that grated on my nerves. Her eyes were glued to the baby, but mine were fixed on her. In the stillness of the hospital room, everything felt amplified. The hum of the machines, the faint murmur of distant footsteps in the hallway. But the loudest sound was the raging storm in my head. My wife, the woman I once trusted with my soul, was standing there as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I couldn't take my eyes off the baby's face. Was it mine? A month ago, I would have been standing here with tears of joy, overwhelmed by the sight of my newborn child. But today, all I felt was anger, cold, festering anger that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. For she finally glanced up, a soft smile playing on her lips, as if we were still the happy couple we used to be, as if she hadn't torn our lives apart with her betrayal. I gripped the doorway, fingers tightening around the cool metal frame until my knuckles turned white. Her smile faded when she met my eyes. She knew. "Max," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "aren't you going to come closer? Look at our baby. Our baby." I took a slow, deliberate step into the room. The tension was suffocating, the space between us a battlefield neither of us was willing to cross. I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the way she shifted uncomfortably. She knew exactly why I wasn't rushing to hold the baby. She knew why I stood there like a stranger in a room that should have been filled with love and joy. "Susan," I said, my voice colder than I intended, "I want a paternity test." The words cut through the air like a blade, and I saw her flinch. Her arms tightened protectively around the baby as if I'd just threatened her. Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a moment I thought she might crumble. But then she straightened her shoulders, her expression hardening. "Max, how could you say that? This is your child, our child." I wanted to believe her. I really did, but I couldn't shake the image from my mind, the image of her with him. The man she had sworn was just a mistake, just a fleeting moment of weakness. But that fleeting moment had left me wondering if this baby, this innocent life, was a product of our love or his betrayal. "I need to know, Susan," I said, my voice quieter now, though no less resolute. "Before I sign anything, before I put my name on that birth certificate, I need to know." Her lips trembled as she held back the sob that threatened to break free. She looked down at the baby, her tears spilling onto the soft blanket wrapped around the newborn. "Max, please don't do this. I love you. I made a mistake, but this baby," her voice cracked, "this baby is yours." I could feel the rage boiling just beneath my skin, but I fought to keep it under control. I wasn't going to let her tears manipulate me this time. Not after everything that had happened. "How do you expect me to believe you?" I spat, the venom in my words undeniable. "You didn't think about me when you were screwing him, Susan. You didn't think about our family. Now you want me to just trust you, after all the lies?" She let out a broken sob, clutching the baby tighter as if the child could shield her from the truth. "I'm sorry, Max. I'm so sorry." Her apology hung in the air, meaningless. It didn't change the fact that I had spent the last months questioning every moment of our marriage. It didn't erase the nights I stayed up late, watching her sleep beside me, wondering how she could betray me so deeply. I watched her crumble, but I felt nothing. Not pity, not empathy, just an icy numbness. This was her doing. She had destroyed us. And now I just needed to know the truth. Was this child mine? I took another step toward her, my gaze never leaving the baby's face. "I'll be making arrangements for the test," I said flatly. "Until then." I turned away, unable to look at her any longer. She cried harder behind me, her sobs echoing in the sterile hospital room, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Until then, nothing mattered, nothing except the truth. I spent the night in the hospital parking lot, the hum of distant traffic mixing with the pounding in my head. I couldn't go home, not to the empty house, not to the bedroom that still smelled like us, like what we used to be. I needed space, distance, something to keep me from losing my mind. The paternity test was arranged quickly. I made sure of that. Money wasn't an issue when it came to figuring out whether I'd been living a lie. The nurse, delicate and professional, swabbed the baby's cheek as I stood there, arms crossed, glaring at everything except the child. I couldn't bring myself to look at the baby to long. Not yet. Susan sat in silence, her eyes red and swollen. She hadn't said much since my demand for the test. What could she say? Apologies didn't matter anymore. Promises, tears, they were just background noise. I was numb to it all. The test would take a few days. The longest days of my life. Back at home, the quiet suffocated me. I wandered the halls like a ghost, replaying every conversation we'd had over the last year. Every night she came home late, Every text message she hid with a sly smile. How could I have missed it? The little signs, the subtle changes in her behavior. How could I have been so blind? I remember the first time I saw her with him. I didn't know it at the time, of course. He was just a man, someone she waved to across the street as we walked out of a restaurant together. A colleague, she said, nothing to worry about. But I had seen the way her eyes lingered just a little too long, the faint blush in her cheeks when he smiled back at her. I brushed it off then like an idiot. I trusted her. I trusted that after years of marriage. After everything we'd been through, we were solid. But trust is a fragile thing. One crack and it all falls apart. The baby's room was ready, decorated. Susan had done most of it while I was at work, preparing for the life we were supposed to share. The soft blue walls, the mobiles hanging over the crib, spinning in slow, lazy circles. It all mocked me now. Was it my son lying in that hospital crib? Or was I just some fool raising another man's child? I sat down in the rocker by the window, the one I was supposed to use for late-night feedings and quiet moments with my baby. I imagined myself holding the child, staring into those tiny eyes, searching for something, some sign, some flicker of familiarity. How would I be able to tell if he wasn't mine? But then I stopped myself. What if he was mine? What if, after all this suspicion and rage, the child was truly mine? Could I love him? Could I ever look at him without seeing the shadow of what Susan had done? The anger roared back, filling the silence. I stood up, unable to sit still anymore. I punched the wall, my fist cracking the plaster. The pain was sharp, instant, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the truth. And I didn't have it yet. 3 days later, the phone call came. I sat in my car, engine idling, fingers drumming against the steering wheel. My breath came out in shallow bursts, my chest tightening as the nurse's calm voice filled my ears. I barely heard her at first. It wasn't until she said the words, the ones I had been both dreading and needing to hear, that my brain kicked back into gear. Mr. Holloway, the test results are in. The baby is. I held my breath. My breath. It's yours. I didn't respond. Couldn't. The world stopped spinning for a moment, my mind going blank. Yours. Mine. The baby was mine. I hung up the phone without saying a word. My hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel, staring at nothing in particular. I should have felt something, relief, joy, even sorrow. But all I felt was a deep, hollow ache in my chest. The baby was mine. But what did that change? When I got back to the hospital, Susan looked up at me with wide, expectant eyes. She had been waiting for this moment, probably hoping that everything would go back to normal once we got the news. But there was no going back, not after what she had done. It's true, she whispered, her voice shaking. He's yours? I nodded slowly, still standing in the doorway. She looked down at the baby in her arms, tears falling freely now, but this time they weren't tears of fear or guilt. They were tears of relief. She thought we could move on from this. She thought this would fix everything, but I wasn't ready to let her off that easily. I took a deep breath, stepping further into the room. He's mine, I said, my voice steady, cold. But that doesn't change what you did, Susan. That doesn't erase the fact that you betrayed me, that you risked everything. Our family, our life for what? A fling? A mistake? Max, I? No, I cut her off, my hand rising to silence her. I'm not done. She flinched at the sharpness in my tone, and for a moment I felt a flicker of satisfaction. She deserved this. She deserved to feel what I had been feeling for months. I'll be there for the baby. My son, I'll be there for him, I said, my eyes never leaving hers. But as for us, as for you and me, I let the silence hang in the air, the weight of my words crashing down around us. I don't know if I can ever forgive you. Her face crumbled, the tears flowing freely now, but I didn't comfort her. I couldn't. I just turned and left, the hospital room door clicking shut behind me, sealing away the life I had once known. The drive home felt like a dream, not the kind where you wake up refreshed, but the kind where everything feels distorted, where you're stuck in slow motion watching a life you no longer recognize unfold in front of you. I pulled into the driveway, the familiar sight of our house doing nothing to ease the tension that had settled deep in my chest. The baby was mine. The test confirmed it, yet there was no sense of victory, no wave of relief, just a hollow, aching emptiness that clung to me like a shadow. Inside the house, the silence was deafening. Every creak, every tick of the clock echoed in the emptiness, reminding me of the life that had once filled these walls. The laughter, the love, it all felt so distant now. I stood in the living room, staring at the framed photos on the mantel, pictures of us smiling, happy, blissfully unaware of the storm that was coming. My eyes fell on one photo in particular, our wedding day, Susan radiant in her white dress, her eyes sparkling with love and trust, and me standing beside her, grinning like a fool, completely oblivious to the future that awaited us. I had believed in forever back then. I had believed in her, but forever didn't mean the same thing anymore. If I picked up the frame, running my thumb over the glass, I could almost hear her laughter from that day. The way she whispered, "I love you," in my ear as we danced, as if no one else existed but the two of us. I had been hers completely. I had given her everything, and in return she had given me a life I thought was perfect. Now that life was in ruins. I hurled the frame across the room, the sound of shattering glass cutting through the silence like a gunshot. The picture landed face down, the broken shards scattered across the floor, as broken as the promises she had made. I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. How did we get here? The next morning, Susan was released from the hospital with our son. She called to tell me, her voice hesitant, like she was unsure whether I'd even show up. I told her I would, but that didn't mean anything. I wasn't doing it for her. I was doing it for my son. My son. The words still felt foreign, like they didn't quite fit. And when I arrived, she was already waiting by the hospital entrance, the baby bundled in her arms. The sunlight filtered through the glass doors, casting a soft glow around her, but all I saw were the shadows of what she'd done, the shadows of a man who wasn't me. I got out of the car and walked toward her, my steps heavy, deliberate. Susan looked up at me, her eyes swollen from the tears I knew she had been shedding all night. There was no smile, no relief on her face, just uncertainty. "Max," she started, her voice barely a whisper, "thank you for coming." I didn't respond. Instead, I reached out, taking the baby from her arms. He was light, fragile, his tiny fingers curling around my thumb as he yawned, completely unaware of the chaos surrounding him. For a brief moment, everything else faded away. It was just him and me, my son. And for the first time since all of this had started, I felt something stir inside me. Love. It was faint, but it was there, like the first flicker of a flame. But then I looked up at Susan, and the rage came flooding back. "Let's go," I said coldly, turning toward the car without another glance at her. She followed silently, getting into the passenger seat as I secured the baby in the back. Our ride home was quiet, tension thick between us. Every now and then I caught her glancing at me from the corner of her eye, but I kept my focus on the road. There was nothing left to say. Not yet. When we arrived home, Susan hesitated at the door, as if she wasn't sure she belonged there anymore. And truthfully, I wasn't sure either. I wasn't sure of anything except the fact that my son needed me, and that was the only reason I had brought her back here. Carried the baby inside, laying him gently in the crib. Susan stood behind me, watching in silence, her arms around herself as if she were trying to hold herself together. I knew she was waiting for me to say something, to give her a sign that there was hope. But I wasn't ready to give her that, not yet. Days passed, but they blurred together in a haze of resentment and awkward silences. So we lived like strangers in our own home, bound together by baby, but divided by everything else. I took care of him as much as I could, not out of spite, but because I needed to bond with him. I needed to know that, despite everything, he was still a part of me. But Susan tried. I'll give her that. She tried to mend things in small ways, cooking dinner, cleaning the house, attempting to talk about anything other than what hung between us like a dark cloud. But I couldn't bring myself to engage. Every time she opened her mouth, all I could think about was her with him. Every time she smiled, all I could see was her betraying me. One night as we sat at the dinner table, the baby sleeping in the next room, she finally broke the silence. "Max, we need to talk," she said softly, her voice shaky but determined. I looked up from my plate, my eyes narrowing. "About what?" "About us. About everything." I set down my fork, crossing my arms over my chest. "Fine, let's talk. You first." She swallowed hard, her hands trembling as she reached for her water glass. I know I've hurt you. I know what I did was unforgivable. But Max, I need you to know that I love you. I've always loved you." I scoffed, leaning back in my chair. "You've got a funny way of showing it." Her eyes filled with tears, but she pressed on. "It was a mistake. A stupid, terrible mistake, and I regret it every single day. I never should have." But you did." I cut her off, my voice cold. "You did, Susan. You chose to do it. You chose to betray me, to betray us. So don't sit here and pretend like it just happened. You made a choice." Her tears spilled over, and she wiped them away quickly. I know, Max. And I'll never stop apologizing for it. But I need to know if there's a chance, if we can ever fix this." The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to scream at her, to throw every ounce of anger and hurt in her face. But instead, I just stared at her, my heart a tangled mess of emotions I couldn't sort through. "I don't know," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you." Her face crumpled, and she let out a choked sob, but I didn't reach out to comfort her. I couldn't, not yet, maybe not ever. I stood up, leaving her at the table as I walked to the nursery, the soft sound of my son's breathing the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. The nursery was dimly lit, a faint glow from the moon casting soft shadows across the room. The baby stirred in his crib, a tiny whimper escaping his lips before he settled back into sleep. I stood over him, watching his little chest rise and fall, wondering how something so innocent could come from something so broken. My son, he was mine. But as I looked down at him, that flicker of love that I had felt in the hospital now mixed with something darker. The question that haunted me every time I held him, could I ever truly be his father? Behind me I heard Susan's soft footsteps. She lingered in the doorway, watching me in silence, unsure if she was allowed to step into this space I had created with our son. The distance between us felt like an ocean too wide to cross. She had shattered everything, and now all that was left was the fragile bond between me and this tiny human. "Max," she whispered, her voice raw from crying. "Please, talk to me." I didn't turn to face her. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I focused on the steady rhythm of the baby's breathing, grounding myself in that small, simple sound. "There's nothing left to say," I finally replied, my voice flat. "What do you expect me to do, Susan? Pretend like everything is fine? Pretend like you didn't rip our lives apart?" She let out a shaky breath, stepping into the room. I know I hurt you, but we can't keep living like this. The baby, he needs us, Max, both of us. We need to figure this out for his sake." I felt my hands tighten around the edge of the crib. Her words cut deeper than she realized. Yes, the baby needed us, but I wasn't sure I could be what he needed. Not when every time I looked at him, I was reminded of her betrayal. I turned slowly, meeting her eyes for the first time since our conversation at dinner. "For his sake?" I repeated, my tone sharp. "Where was that concern when you were with him? Did you think about the baby then, Susan? Did you think about me?" She flinched, tears welling up in her eyes again. "I was stupid. I wasn't thinking." "I regret it, Max. Every single day, I regret it." "Regret doesn't fix this." I shot back, the bitterness in my voice undeniable. "Regret doesn't erase the nights you spent with him. Regret doesn't change the fact that I can't even look at you without seeing what you did." Her sobs broke through, but this time I didn't feel any satisfaction in seeing her fall apart. Instead, all I felt was exhaustion. I was so tired of the anger, the hurt, the endless cycle of pain. I wanted to move on, but I didn't know how. "I love you," she choked out through her tears. "I love you, Max. I never stopped loving you." The words hung in the air between us, but they felt hollow, empty. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. But trust doesn't just return because you want it to. It has to be rebuilt. And right now, I wasn't sure we could ever rebuild what we had lost. "I don't know if love is enough," I said quietly, my gaze falling to the floor. "You can love someone and still destroy them." She took a tentative step toward me, reaching out, but I stepped back, shaking my head. "Don't," I warned. "Don't touch me. Not right now." Her hand dropped to her side, and the silence that followed was thick with tension. We stood there just a few feet apart, but it felt like miles. The days dragged on, each one bleeding into the next. We moved around each other like strangers, carefully avoiding any confrontation, but the unspoken words hung heavy in the air. I threw myself into taking care of the baby, focusing on him as if he were the only thing keeping me grounded in a world that no longer made sense. Susan, to her credit, tried to give me space. She kept her distance but always hovered nearby, watching, waiting for a chance to talk. But I couldn't talk. Not yet. Every time I thought I was ready, the image of her with him would flash through my mind, and the anger would surge back fresh and burning. One afternoon, I stood in the kitchen making a bottle for the baby. The sun filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the room. I could hear the faint sound of Susan's voice in the living room, singing softly to the baby as she rocked him. Should have been a peaceful moment, my wife and child, safe and sound in our home. But all I felt was a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. The sound of her voice suddenly grated on me, and I slammed the bottle down on the counter harder than I meant to. It cracked, spilling formula everywhere. I cursed under my breath, running my hands through my hair in frustration. Susan appeared in the doorway, the baby still cradled in her arms, her eyes wide with concern. "Max, are you okay?" I didn't answer right away. I stood there staring at the mess I had made, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. "No," I finally muttered. "No, I'm not on my—" She shifted the baby in her arms, taking a hesitant step closer. "What can I do?" I turned to face her, my eyes hard. "You can't do anything, Susan. You already did enough." Her face crumpled, and she let out a soft sob, but I didn't stop. The anger had been building for days, and now it was spilling out, raw and unchecked. "Well, you want to know what you can do?" I continued, my voice rising. "You can tell me how the hell you thought it was okay to ruin everything we had. Or you can explain to me how I'm supposed to trust you again after what you did." She sobbed harder, clutching the baby tighter as if he could somehow shield her from the truth. But there was no escaping it, not anymore. "I'm sorry," she whispered through her tears. "I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this." I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls. "You broke us, Susan. You broke everything." She sank to the floor, still holding the baby, her body shaking with sobs. I stood there, panting, the anger coursing through me like wildfire. But as I watched her cry, something inside me shifted. This wasn't getting us anywhere. The yelling, the accusations, the endless cycle of blame, it wasn't helping. If anything, it was making things worse. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. "Look," I said, my voice softer now, "I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if we can fix this. But I do know one thing: we can't keep going like this. We need help." She looked up at me, her tear-streaked face filled with desperation. "Help?" she whispered. "Yeah," I nodded, the words coming out slower now. "Counseling, therapy, something? Because if we don't, this is going to destroy us." She wiped her tears, nodding quickly. "I'll do anything, Max, anything to fix this. I don't want to lose you. I can't lose you." I sighed, feeling the weight of everything settle back onto my shoulders. "I don't know if this can be fixed," I admitted, "but for the sake of the baby, for the sake of our son, we need to at least try." Her eyes softened at the mention of the baby, and she looked down at the tiny bundle in her arms, gently brushing a kiss against his forehead. "For him," she whispered. I nodded, my chest tightening as I watched them. "Yeah, for him." But even as I said the words, I couldn't shake the nagging doubt in the back of my mind. Could we really move past this? Could I ever look at Susan again without seeing the man who had torn us apart? Could I ever hold my son without questioning everything? I didn't know, but for now I was willing to try. For him, for my son. Weeks passed, and the routine of life set in a fragile rhythm that felt like it could snap at any moment. Susan and I barely spoke outside of the necessary conversations about the baby. Counseling appointments had been scheduled, but I hadn't decided if I was really ready for that. I told myself I was doing it for him, for our son, but deep down I wasn't sure if there was anything left to say between us. The baby was the only constant. I spent every moment I could with him, feeding him, rocking him to sleep, trying to create some kind of bond. I wanted to love him, and sometimes I did. Sometimes I'd catch myself smiling as he stared up at me with those wide, innocent eyes. But other times, the doubt gnawed at me. Every time I looked at his face, I wondered, was this the face of a child I could truly raise, knowing what had happened between his mother and another man? One night, I woke to the sound of the baby crying. The clock on the nightstand read 3:15 a.m., and I groaned, pulling myself out of bed. As I walked past Susan's side of the bed, I noticed she was already awake, sitting up with her knees drawn to her chest, staring blankly at the wall. I paused in the doorway, watching her for a moment. She hadn't noticed me. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, as if the weight of everything had finally crushed her spirit. This wasn't the Susan I had married, the woman full of life, confidence, and determination. This was someone broken, lost in her own guilt and shame. I didn't feel satisfaction watching her like this, just emptiness. I left her there and went to the nursery, scooping the baby up into my arms. He squirmed, his little fists balled up in frustration as he cried, but I held him close, rocking him back and forth until he quieted. His tiny fingers wrapped around my thumb, and for a moment the world felt still, peaceful, even. "I'm trying, little guy," I whispered, resting my cheek against his soft head. "I'm really trying." As I stood there, holding him, something shifted inside me. The anger that had burned so fiercely for so long began to dull, replaced by something I hadn't felt in a long time of hope. The next day, I decided it was time to try the counseling. It wasn't for Susan, and it wasn't for me, but for the baby. He deserved more than the shattered home we were giving him. He deserved a chance, even if I wasn't sure I could ever forgive her. We sat in the therapist's office, the sterile scent of lavender and leather filling the air. Susan looked nervous, wringing her hands in her lap. while I sat stiffly beside her, arms crossed, staring at the floor. The therapist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, introduced herself and explained the process, but I barely listened. All I could think about was how we got here. Max, the therapist's voice, broke through my thoughts. Would you like to start by telling me how you're feeling? I snorted, shaking my head. How I'm feeling? I repeated, my voice laced with bitterness. I feel like everything I thought I knew about my life is a lie. Like the woman I loved, the woman I trusted, tore everything apart, and I'm supposed to just move on. Susan's face crumpled, but I didn't stop. I wasn't going to sugarcoat it, not here. I feel like I don't even know who I am anymore, I continued, my voice rising with every word. I have a son now, and I want to love him. I do love him. But every time I look at him, I can't help but wonder if he'll always remind me of what she did. The room fell silent, my words hanging in the air. Susan wiped away tears, her body trembling with emotion, but I didn't turn to comfort her. I didn't have it in me. The therapist nodded, her expression calm measured. It's completely understandable to feel that way, Max. Betrayal like this cuts deep, and it's not something that can be easily healed. But acknowledging those feelings is the first step. It's important to let yourself feel them without judgment. Tom. I scoffed. Feel them? I've been feeling them every damn day. The therapist shifted her attention to Susan. Susan, I know this is difficult for you as well. What do you want to say to Max? Susan's voice was barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I know I've said it 1,000 times, but I don't know how to make him believe it. I don't know how to fix what I've done. I glanced at her, my heart heavy with a mixture of anger and something else, something softer, something I didn't want to acknowledge. How can I believe you? I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. How can I trust you after you? I made a mistake, she interrupted, her voice stronger now, though still filled with pain. A horrible, selfish mistake. But Max, I've never stopped loving you. I've never stopped wanting our family, our life, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn back your trust if that's what it takes. The room was silent again, her words echoing in my mind. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to go back to the way things were before all of this, before the betrayal, the lies, the doubt, but I knew there was no going back. Not really. The therapist leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. Trust can be rebuilt, Max, but it takes time. It takes effort from both of you. If you're both committed to healing, to moving forward, it's possible to find a new way to be together, but it will never be the same. I nodded slowly, my eyes fixed on the floor. I knew she was right. Nothing would ever be the same. But maybe, just maybe, we could find something new. The weeks that followed were hard. Every day was a battle, both with myself and with Susan. Some days I felt like I could forgive her, like we could move forward. Other days the anger flared up again, and I found myself pulling away, retreating into the pain. But we kept going. We kept trying. The baby became the glue that held us together, the one thing we could both focus on without the weight of the past crushing us. In those quiet moments when I held him in my arms or watched Susan feed him, I felt something shift. Slowly, painfully, the walls I had built around my heart began to crack. One night, as I stood in the nursery watching my son sleep, Susan came up behind me. I didn't pull away this time. I let her stand there, close enough that I could feel her warmth, close enough that I could remember what it felt like to love her. I'm still angry, I admitted, my voice low. I don't know when or if that'll ever go away. I know, she whispered, her hand gently brushing my arm. And I'm willing to wait, for as long as it takes. We stood there in silence, the only sound the soft breaths of our sleeping son. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't healing. But it was a start. Months passed, and though the road ahead of us was long, we slowly began to rebuild. Counseling helped. But more than anything, it was the baby, our baby, that brought us back together. It became a bridge between the past and the future, a reason to keep going even when it felt impossible. There were still nights when I lay awake, wondering if I could ever truly forgive her. But there were also nights when I looked at her and remembered why I had loved her in the first place. Why, despite everything, a part of me still did. I didn't know what the future held for us. I didn't know if we could ever fully heal the wounds we had inflicted on each other. But I knew one thing: I wasn't ready to give up. And for now, that was enough. For him. For our son.